Welcome to the world of Dark Souls. I'm Marcus, also known as EMB, and I'll be your narrator and guide. By request, this is an overview of the plot as I understand it in a roughly chronological order, but do take note that the flow of time in Lordran is distorted, so it's difficult to tell when events actually occur. And once again, this is just a general overview of the plot as I see it. And one of the great things about this game, one of the things that I love very much, is that there are many different possible interpretations of the story. Everybody has their own take, and most of them are perfectly valid. So for now, please just sit back, relax, and enjoy. In the beginning, the world was a cold, barren, and dark place. It was inhabited by the everlasting dragons and covered in giant stone arch trees. The dragons were eternal by virtue of their scales of immortality. They also possessed a powerful artifact known as the primordial crystal, which has the power to preserve life. This is interesting, for some people that live in the world of Dark Souls believe that the dragons were not actually alive at all. Life is seen as a weakness that they did not possess. The dragons were an element of nature which transcended both life and death. The arch trees, too, were quite resilient. The demon Great Hammer, wielded by the Asylum Demon, was created from an arch tree. And the giant trees of Lordran are distant offspring of those great arch trees. Shields made from the wood of the trees have substantial magic resistance. It is also implied that the primordial serpents Frampt and Cath were alive in these days. The word primordial implies that they existed from the beginning, or that they gave rise to another life form. I take it to mean that they were alive before the birth of fire. This cold, barren world existed for a time. This period was known as the Age of the Ancients. However, all things must someday pass, and the Age of the Ancients was no exception. Fire was born. This is an unexplained mystery of Dark Souls. Fire simply began to exist. We have no records or clues as to how it came to be. Within the flame were four great souls, the Lord Souls. These powerful artifacts are the main source of conflict in the game. One was claimed by Nito, the first of the dead. Nito is a giant skeleton covered in a cape-like aura of darkness and bones. His title, the First of the Dead, can be interpreted in a couple of different ways. One common idea is that he was literally the first being to die. I interpret it another way. I think he is first amongst the dead, the chief of the dead. He is responsible for administering the death of all things. His Gravelord servants gather the eyes of death and offer them in tribute, and are rewarded with his miracles. Nito fought the ancient dragons by unleashing a powerful miasma, a poisonous cloud of death. Another Lord Soul was claimed by the Witch of IZALITH. She was a powerful sorceress. Pyromancy did not yet exist in these days. She and her daughters were masters of fire sorcery, and they used the IZALITH catalysts to cast their spells. She had at least 7 daughters, as seen in the intro, and 1 son, Ceaseless Discharge. 4 of her daughters are in-game. Quelana, the mother of pyromancy, Chaos Witch Quelag, the fair lady who players call Quelan, and the eldest unnamed daughter, who is outside of the bed of chaos Foggate. These witches weaved great firestorms at the dawn of the Age of Fire. The third normal Lord Soul was claimed by Lord Gwyn. the Lord of Sunlight. He used his powerful bolts of lightning to destroy the scales of the dragons, and he was supported by his loyal knights. At the dawn of the Age of Fire, his knights were all silver. The Black Knights will come later in our tale. He also had 4 special knights, each with a special ring. Dragonslayer Ornstein, whose symbol was the lion, was well known for his ability to slay flying dragons. Hawkeye Goff, whose symbol was obviously the hawk, was also able to bring down dragons with his bow. Lord Gwyn's remaining ranked knights were Lord Blade Kieran, whose symbol was the hornet, and Artorius, symbolized by the wolf. Kieran was a dagger user, and Artorius was unmatched with a greatsword. The knights don't seem to be normal humans. According to the Design Works interview, the theme of Anor Londo is the gods, so it seems likely that they may be lesser deities of sorts. They display considerable longevity, which makes it difficult to place other important followers of Gwyn in the timeline. For example, the Archer Ferris was a very famous marksman who ranked alongside Hawkeye Goff, but at what point in history we can't know for sure. Gwyn also had another major follower named Smo, and he was an executioner with immense strength. However, his love of executions led him to begin eating his victims' bones, and that ruined his chances of gaining the special rank of knighthood. That covers the forces which controlled the first 3 Lord Souls. However, there was one more Lord Soul, a very special Lord Soul, the Dark Soul. The Dark Soul was claimed by the furtive pygmy. The Dark Soul is humanity. It has been split amongst all humans. If you note, the pygmy in the beginning looks quite hollow. That is a human without the power of the Dark Soul. You will notice as well that the fragments of humanity are found from corpses or on rats who scavenge the dead. Additionally, baby skeletons have humanity, as well as the deformed creatures in the Duke's Archives prison. The Lord Souls are quite special indeed. They can't be consumed normally, but they can be divided. Gwyn gave parts of his soul to the 4 kings as well as Seath. The Dark Soul appears to be the most fragmented of all the Lord Souls, as it is spread out amongst all of the humans. But, as I said earlier, all things must pass eventually. Lord Souls can lose their power in Fayth. More on that later. For now, most of the dragons were vanquished by the might of the owners of the Lord Souls, and the Age of Ancients is coming to a close as the Age of Fire begins. There are still some remnants of the Age of the Ancients, however. At least one of the everlasting dragons survived, and some smaller, distant cousins of the ancient dragons are also around, with many of them gathering in the Valley of the Drakes. The Hellkite dragon is in fact one such drake, but a very large drake. Gaping Dragon, on the other hand, is a surviving dragon who has been corrupted by his hunger, such that he lost his bodily organs and turned into one giant mouth whose only desire is to eat. From this point on, the history of the world begins to defy chronological organization. For a time, things seem to have been fairly peaceful and civilization flourished. The realms of IZALITH and Anor Londo were created, and presumably many human lands came to be. Possibly Astora, Baldur, Berenique, Karim, Katarina, definitely New Londo, maybe Ulasil, Thorland, Vinheim, and Zenna. Life also may have flourished within the Great Swamp at this time. In Anor Londo, Gwyn and his family prospered. His firstborn son was a god of war, and his daughter, Guinevere, was revered as a goddess of fertility. His youngest son, however, Gwyndolin, was born with a strong affinity for the moon, which was unusual for a boy, so Gwyn raised him as a daughter. There were many other gods in Anor Londo as well, and they built a magnificent city. religions were established and churches were built. Gwyn's uncle, Allfather Lloyd, was the head of the Way of White, the religion of Thurland. Meanwhile, the rogue goddess Velka seems to have been associated closely with Kareem. One of Gwyn's battlefield companions, Havel the Rock, was a bishop, although we don't know for sure which church he belonged to. Presumably it was the Way of White, but we don't have any direct evidence. Gwyn's dragon ally, Fayth, was promoted to the rank of Duke, and conducted research on the scales of immortality in his archives. But not everything was perfect. There were conflicts during this time. There was a plot against the gods, in fact. The followers of the occult sought to steal the power of Gravelord Nito in an attempt to overthrow the gods. The plot may run even deeper than many realize, as an occult club can even be found in Anor Londo, in the secret stash of Bishop Havel the Rock, no less. However, the plot to overthrow the gods failed, and the dangerous Dark Ember was sealed away, along with other artifacts harmful to the gods. They were placed within a world painted by Aramis, which was hung within the great cathedral of Anor Londo. The Order of Painting Guardians was established to protect the world from those who would seek its contents. The only key to enter the world was a peculiar doll. The gods of Anor Londo survived the plot, and everything was fine. But then something bad happened. The flames began to fade. The power of the Lord Souls began to wane. This event took place 1,000 years before the start of the game, and it set off panic in IZALITH and Anor Londo. The Witch of IZALITH attempted to copy the first flame using a soul, and the result was the birth of the Flame of Chaos, which quickly consumed her and gave birth to hordes of demons. IZALITH was overrun. It was during this time that the original flame sorceries were lost and pyromancy was born. Quelana, Quelag, and the Fair Lady fled from IZALITH. Quelana escaped and taught pyromancy to her pupils. From this, she became known as the Mother of Pyromancy. Carmina, Salomon, Laurentius and his master, all knowledge of pyromancy came from her, although individual pyromancers pioneered new techniques. IZALITH, however, was lost to the demons. The eldest daughter of IZALITH still roams the demon-infested ruins, and the son watches diligently over the corpse of one of his sisters. Gwyn's knights faced the Chaos Demons in battle at some point. The flames charred the knights' armor black. It is unclear who began the battle. It could be that the demons attacked first, or perhaps Gwyn was seeking the power of IZALITH's Lord Soul in order to maintain the flames. In any case, Gwyn, seeing the end of the Age of Fire before his very eyes, divided his soul and granted its power to his followers. He then took what remained and burned himself as fuel for the first flame. This is linking the fire. It was a noble sacrifice, but ultimately futile. The flames continued to fade. Also during this time, the bonfires were created. The bonfires are fueled by the bones of the undead. They can be reinforced using the rite of kindling, which is sought by the Church of Thurland. To kindle the fire, a fragment of the Dark Soul is required. Humanity is sacrificed to maintain the flames. Also in this era, Gwyn's firstborn son, the heir to the sunlight, made some sort of mistake that led to the loss of the annals. He was stripped of his deific status and departed Anor Londo. He left his miracle on his father's coffin. And also note that Gwyn's coffin in Anor Londo does not contain his body. It seems to be merely decorative. For those who believe that Songelereveur is the firstborn son of Gwyn, note the possibility that the body at the Dark Moon Tomb's bonfire could be his, and that he was made undead through death, and spawned at a bonfire elsewhere, perhaps Astora, but that's speculation. In any case, the flames continued to fade, and the gods abandoned Anor Londo, except for Gwendolyn, who created the illusion of sunlight within the city, as well as the illusion of his sister. The remaining Silver Knights stayed to guard the illusionary Guinevere. Ornstein and Smo also remained. The illusion of Guinevere holds the Lord Vessel, an artifact of Lord Gwyn that is capable of holding the Lord Souls. Gwendolyn, who acts in league with Primordial Serpent Frampt, uses the illusion of Guinevere to attempt to manipulate players into trying to capture the Lord Souls, open the kiln of the First Flame, and sacrifice themselves as fuel for the flame, just as Gwyn had. Linking the flame will result in your sacrifice, and the flames will continue to burn, for a time. However, the Lord Souls cannot last forever. Meanwhile, in New Londo, another Primordial Serpent, Cath, convinces the rulers of New Londo and their knights that the correct course of action is to extinguish the flame and usher in an age of dark. This is the birth of the Dark Wraiths. They seek to gather the fragments of the Dark Soul while eliminating the owners of the other Lord Souls, so that one true Dark Lord can be born. At this point, I'd like for you to take note of the ill effects of possessing too much humanity. The Firekeeper souls are draws for humanity, but the infinite amounts of humanity, the fragments of the Dark Soul, that are drawn to them cause problems as well, such as disfigurement and blindness. This may be why the Dark Soul was divided into fragments of humanity in the first place. Also note that Cath wants for the Wraiths to offer the fragments of the Dark Soul to him in exchange for the Art of Life Drain. In New Londo, a group of 3 healers made the difficult decision to flood the city, killing the citizens and sealing the Dark Wraiths away. Also, the Knight Artorias took it upon himself to hunt the Wraiths, and cursed his greatsword in order to destroy the ghosts who stood in his way. His plot will continue in the DLC and in the PC edition, and we will find out the truth of what happened to him in the Abyss. I believed he joined the Wraiths and was spreading darkness to the land in an attempt to become the Dark Lord. We shall soon see, and when the truth is revealed, we will speak again.
Luigi です。